Welcome to Performance Driven Living, the podcast where we question everything. We don't tiptoe around tough topics, we walk right into them. Not to provoke, but to get closer to what's real. You might not agree with everything you hear, and that's okay. The show isn't about being right, it's about being real. These conversations are meant to stretch your thinking, challenge assumptions, and spark something deeper. The views shared are those of our guests and may not reflect those of the host or team. And while we dive deep into health, performance, and transformation, this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor before making changes to your health or lifestyle. Take what lands, leave what doesn't. But whatever you do, don't stop questioning.
We're here at the Performance Driven Living podcast at the Changing Life and Destiny Conference here in Plano, Texas. And I have the honor of talking to my friend, Dr. Nathan Bryan, who is the king of nitric oxide. I mean, is there a better way to say that? Like, I know your products, the things that you've worked on. I've been familiar with Numa for years.
Yeah.
And Nathan, so the point of this podcast and what we do is, again, performance-driven living, right? It's my contention that people want to always live in a way, or the people I want to be around anyways, want to live in a way that they can outperform yesterday. It's that 1% better kind of mindset. Like, how could we be better? I heard you in a talk the other day using that exact same metaphor. And everything we talk about here is, how do we do better? How do we show up better in the world tomorrow than we did yesterday? And I happen to know that you're an expert on nitric oxide, which is this Nobel Prize winning molecule that the world in many cases knows nothing about.
That's right.
And yet it is a miraculous, I'm correct, but it's a miraculous molecule. And the truth of the matter is, I mean, nitric oxide is everything from anti-aging to sports performance to fixing erectile dysfunction, like
all of the
performance in
above.
as many ways as you can imagine. Nitric oxide is a part of that. And I would just love it if, teach me whatever you have. And I want the audience to listen to what you have to say about how does nitric oxide just change the game?
Well, you know, I've spent 25 years in the basic sciences in academia as a professor of medicine, really studying nitric oxide, how the human body makes it, what goes wrong in people that have lost the ability to make it, and then how do we fix that? How do we correct that? Because you touched on a lot of the high points. It's a vasodilator, so it's a gas that's produced in the lining of the blood vessel, and it dilates the blood vessels, and it basically eliminates the inflammation that we see in the lining of the blood vessel. So vascular inflammation, microinflammation, microvascular inflammation, that's really the earliest stages of cardiovascular disease or atherosclerosis. But, you know, it does so much more. It mobilizes our own stem cells and helps repair and replace dysfunctional cells. It prevents our telomeres from getting shorter, so it extends our lifespan. And perhaps from an performance perspective, it improves mitochondrial function. So it's improving the efficiency of energy production with less oxygen. And it's improving mitochondrial biogenesis. So when we make adequate nitric oxide, we have normal blood flow, we can dilate blood vessels upon demand, we have less inflammation. In fact, some of my patents are on a method of reducing inflammation with nitric oxide. Lowers oxidative stress, immune dysfunction, everything we see with chronic disease, nitric oxide appears to address it.
I actually want to unpack that last statement because you talked about oxidative stress, and I don't think most people understand exactly what oxidative stress is. It's a word that gets thrown around, particularly in our circles, but it gets used, I think, outside of these circles a little bit more than it used to now. And I tell people, like, oxidative stress is literally the dichotomy of longevity.
That's exactly right.
It's almost a matter of your body deals with oxidative stress through environmental toxins, through everything you can imagine. And the more oxidative stress builds up, eventually your body just can't handle the oxidative load.
That's right.
And then the oxidative stress begins the aging process. And it's like there's a tipping point for most people because when you're young, your body's able to deal with it. And eventually the oxidative stress ends up building up to a point that your body just can't deal with it any longer, right?
Yeah, it's rust. That's what rust is in the environment. It's an oxidation of the iron.
Yes.
And oxidation is a loss of an electron. So when we become oxidized, we're losing electrons. Antioxidants are electron donors.
Correct.
So we get oxidative stress when we have an imbalance of antioxidants with prooxidants. And so what we've looked at biochemically is what are the primary sources of oxidative stress in the cell. And it's NADPH oxidase, it's an uncoupled electron transport chain, and it's actually the enzyme that makes nitric oxide becomes uncoupled and it produces superoxide.
Yes.
So when we look at the three primary sources of oxidative stress in the cell, then how do we fix that? And fortunately, nitric oxide fixes all those. So if you lose the ability to produce nitric oxide, you get overproduction of superoxide from your NADPH oxidase. Your electron transport chain of the mitochondria become uncoupled. Now you're reducing molecular oxygen to superoxide, and we produce superoxide from the enzyme that's supposed to make nitric oxide.
So talk to me about the danger of superoxide, though.
Yeah, so superoxide is an oxygen radical. And so oxygen radicals steal electrons, so they oxidize other molecules.
Which net in effect means that the problem makes the problem bigger.
No, and it's a perpetual reaction because these oxygen radicals, which means that it has an unpaired electron in its outer orbital. So it's always trying to grab another electron to stabilize that configuration. So the only way to stop a radical reaction is with another radical. And nitric oxide is a radical, it's a free radical. But it's different than superoxide because it's a nitrogen-oxygen bond, and there's a polarity. So it's complex physical
balance,
chemistry. Yeah. So nitric oxide donates an electron, which means it's antioxidant properties. So when nitric oxide donates its electron to superoxide or hydroxyl radical, it neutralizes that free radical, that oxygen radical, and it prevents oxidative stress. So it completely neutralizes the damage.
So talk to me. So oxidative stress, of course, for the audience's sake, we're talking this is rust.
That's right. You're rusting from the inside.
The body gets rusty enough until it dies.
Yeah.
Is really, and I always go back to that Tin Man kind of analogy, right? Like Tin Man's out in the haunted forest, and like things are just not working the way they did. But Dorothy comes along, gives him some oil, and things start working. He does his happy dance. Is there a way to reverse oxidative stress then?
Absolutely. So again, it's a balance between antioxidants and pro-oxidants. So if we can stop the oxidative stress inside the cell, then that's a major step. The other thing is, unfortunately, we're exposed to a lot of toxins in the environment. The water we drink, the food we eat, things we're exposed to in the environment. Stress. So we have to eat an antioxidant-rich diet, and then we need to do things that promote and limit the oxidative stress.
And also just get the oxidative stress out of our lives.
Yeah, we have to understand that how do we... So there's an electrical potential that's required to extract an electron from every molecule. And the redox potential is for glutathione is much different than ascorbic acid, than alpha lipoic acid, and all these known antioxidants. So what we have to do is figure out what electrical potential do we need to prevent oxidation of certain biomolecules. And that's what really our research has been on for the past 20 years. We know how to prevent oxidation of BH4 tetrahydrobiopterin that prevents NOS uncoupling, so we can maintain normal endothelial nitric oxide production and prevent that age-related loss.
So I want to dig into that endothelial production of nitric oxide for a moment, because that cardiovascular health is a personal topic for me. When we talk about endothelial function, unpack that for me, because I want to draw some connections between that and blood pressure.
Yeah.
45.4% of the U.S. population struggles with hypertension, or has at least been diagnosed with hypertension. Save all those that haven't been. How does this endothelial function connect there, and nitric oxide's role in it?
So the endothelial cells are the single layer of cells that line all blood vessels throughout the body. Right. It's your lymphatics is lined by endothelial cells, and your entire cardiovascular system is lined by endothelial cells. So 40 years ago, it was thought the endothelium was a barrier, right? It was designed to keep things into the blood supply versus extravascular. But in 1980, it was recognized that the endothelium is a vasoactive, even an endocrine organ that secretes a molecule that causes the blood vessels to relax. And that was Bob Furchgott who discovered this, what he called endothelium-derived relaxing factor. And then in 1987, Lou Ignarro discovered that EDRF is nitric oxide gas. So now the endothelium is a vasoactive organ system. And what we call endothelial dysfunction is when the enzyme eNOS, endothelial nitric oxide synthase, is no longer functional and can no longer produce nitric oxide, then we don't get vasodilation. In fact, we get vasoconstriction.
Correct.
And then you get an upregulation of adhesion molecules, white blood cells, platelets, monocytes, neutrophils stick, and we get vascular inflammation.
And so I want to break that down for the audience a little bit in this idea that the endothelium is almost like, I call it the thermostat of the cardiovascular system. Like it's the endothelial lining of the cardiovascular system that actually recognizes when the blood vessel needs to expand and contract. So it literally is the regulator.
It has to be responsive to agonists or stimulators or activators. If it's not, then we can't get. The best example is during sexual function, because erectile dysfunction is a symptom
Correct.
of nitric oxide deficiency. So if we're about to be intimate and we're stimulated, the body's response is to make nitric oxide in the sex organ, the blood vessels of the sex organs. We get dilation, we get engorgement, and that's an erection in men and women. But if you have endothelial dysfunction and the blood cells can't make nitric oxide, you don't get vasodilation, you don't get engorgement, and we call that erectile dysfunction.
Correct.
But if that endothelial dysfunction is occurring in the blood vessels of the sex organs, it's systemic. You've got the same dysfunction
Correct.
in the coronary arteries and the cerebral arteries. So it's really the canary in the coal mine that tells us, tells patients, tells people that you have endothelial dysfunction and you're on a slippery slope to onset of cardiovascular disease.
So we're running off topic here, but I like it. So tell me, so for instance, getting into this topic of erectile dysfunction, then you've mentioned the canary in the coal mine. I'm curious from your position as a researcher and a nitric oxide specialist, let's say a man ends up being diagnosed with erectile dysfunction, or not diagnosed, I mean, he knows it.
Yeah.
So he knows something.
Those things aren't working.
Like, but we treat that like it's a sexual dysfunction issue, when in fact, if somebody is diagnosed with erectile dysfunction, or a doctor, like we're like, here's Viagra, here's Cialis, here's whatever, here, this will fix this. But again, it's the medical community, again, not to dog on the medical community, but maybe a little bit, we're passing out symptom reduction, when in fact, that is a symptom that tells you you've got a bigger cardiovascular problem, and we're not dealing with that.
Yeah.
Like, we agree on that, I assume.
No, without a doubt. So the challenge is, well, it's not a challenge, it's just the facts. So the PD-5 inhibitors like the Viagras and the Cialis and Levitra, they were approved in 1998. So 27 years ago.
Right.
And so we know from the clinical data that only 50% of the men that are prescribed Viagra or Cialis for erectile dysfunction respond with better erections. So these drugs don't work in 50% of the people in which they're prescribed. Because when you understand how these drugs are working, they're called phosphodiesterase inhibitors. So the way the relaxation occurs is in the endothelial cells, when they're activated, they produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide's a gas. Mm-hmm. It diffuses into the smooth muscle that surrounds blood vessels. And then that nitric oxide binds to an enzyme called guanylyl cyclase. Complex biochemistry, make a long story short. It leads to an increase in a second messenger called cyclic GMP. And it's cyclic GMP that allows for the calcium mobilization, smooth muscle relaxation. So phosphodiesterase enzymes degrade cyclic GMP. Cyclic GMP is dependent upon nitric oxide production. So nitric oxide is upstream of PD-5 activity.
Yes.
So the reason 50% of the people don't respond is because they're not making any nitric oxide in the endothelium of the blood vessels. So there's no increase in cyclic GMP. So there's no substrate for PD-5 inhibitors to work on.
The interruption's not, it's up here. It's not down here.
It's like what I say, it's dominoes, right? Yep. Nitric oxide is the first domino. Once that flips, it's a cascade. But if you don't flip that first domino,
and
nothing else
the
is
issue
going to happen.
Is we're prescribing with the intention of fixing the third domino or the fourth domino. We're not fixing the first one, which doesn't even require a prescription.
No, that's right. It's diet, lifestyle, medical technology. It's pretty simple.
Correct. Which is phenomenal, because obviously, a man who gets, an erectile dysfunction problem that's an ego issue on top of everything else. But
at least a psychological issue. It's a physiological issue, but then it leads
to psychological issue. It leads to relational issues. It leads to divorce. Leads to all sorts of issues. And again, something I hate to say as basic as, but nitric oxide shouldn't be that big of a mystery to people, but it seems to be, because word hasn't gotten out to explain to people the upstream, the preventative, but the upstream benefits of just having nitric oxide in the body.
Yeah, so when you look at it from a mechanism of action and etiology standpoint, it's a symptom of nitric oxide deficiency.
Correct.
Just like Alzheimer's and dementia is a symptom of chronic nitric oxide deficiency. Hypertension is a symptom of nitric oxide deficiency.
Yes.
So today we can address the root cause of all these chronic diseases and not just treat the symptoms. Because similar to erectile dysfunction, and you brought it up, 50% of the people that are given antihypertensive medications for their high blood pressure don't respond with better blood pressure.
Correct.
And why is that? It's because they're put on an ACE inhibitor, an ARB, or a calcium channel blocker.
Which isn't the problem.
No, the problem isn't a renin-angiotensin or kidney issue. Nitric oxide addresses the physics of blood pressure. So we have a finite amount of blood pumping through our body at any given time. If we make nitric oxide, we dilate the blood vessels. Now we've got the same volume going through bigger pipes. If we can't make nitric oxide, we're chronically constricted. Get the same volume of blood going through smaller pipes. Physics tell us
kindergarten hose.
pressure goes up.
Yep.
If we give nitric oxide or restore nitric oxide, we vasodilate, blood pressure comes down, and it's normal.
And all we're doing is putting additional strain on the heart over and over again because you're making it force fluid through a smaller opening.
Yeah, and then you get left ventricular hypertrophy, you get heart failure, and people die.
Yeah, and again, it's
a very simple fix.
I said this in a talk the other day here at the conference, and we're talking 50% of the U.S. population have been diagnosed with hypertension. What exactly is the definition of a pandemic? Because we're blowing whistles on pandemic level stuff all over the place, but why is this not a conversation that we're having about hypertension and how this is affecting things? And again, especially considering the solution is only 50% effective.
Yeah, now the fact that cardiovascular disease remains the #1 killer today worldwide is simply unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Unacceptable, yeah.
Because we know what causes it, we know how to diagnose it, and there's technology to treat it. So for me, it's a lack of translation of the science. And it's a lack of being able to penetrate into the pharma model of continuously medicating
I'm going to put you on the
people
spot. Why do you
with
think that is?
polypharmacy. Yeah. Medicine's a business. It's a for-profit business. In fact, it's the most profitable business enterprise in the world.
Especially in the U.S.
Especially in the U.S. We have 4% of the population, and we prescribe 60% of the global drugs. And we have the sickest population on Earth. So just that data itself tells us that drug therapy is not making anyone better.
You'd think, right? You'd think more people would be jumping on board with this. Now, Nathan, I know you've been working on a lot of other projects, and you've got your fingers in a new upcoming clinical trial talking about nitric oxide and its effectiveness and wanting to prove that from an FDA perspective, as well as getting more products on the market to do this. What do you got? Tell me what you're working on.
Well, we try to, number one, understand what goes wrong in people that can't make nitric oxide and then provide solutions to that. So we've had dietary supplements on the market for a number of years. We've got topical products for skincare and beauty. We just launched an oral line of products, toothpaste, mouth rinse that's targeting the oral microbiome.
As opposed to mouthwash, which is just killing people's microbiome.
We want to support the microbiome. We don't want to kill it and destroy it. But we're also, I was trained as a drug discovery biochemist. So I never intended to develop dietary supplements or consumer products. Right?
The opposite,
we're designed to understand the mechanism of disease to the extent that we can develop rational therapies. So we're working on a nitric oxide releasing lozenge for ischemic heart disease. 33 million Americans live with ischemic heart disease, 250 million people worldwide. The cornerstone therapy is isosorbide or nitroglycerin. It's effective at the acute symptomatic relief of angina, but the data tell us that the longer patients are on the organic nitrates, the worse they get. So there's a huge demand for that. And our clinical data show us that the lozenge will dilate the coronary arteries, relieve angina, prolong exercise-induced angina with no tolerance. So we're trying to get that through the FDA, which will start a clinical trial later this year. We've got a drug for Alzheimer's, and we're making a topical drug for diabetic ulcers and non-healing wounds.
So you mentioned organic nitrates, which makes me want to go back because I immediately go to beets,
that's what's called inorganic nitrates. So organic nitrates are nitroglycerin, isosorbide dinitrate, isosorbide mononitrate. So these are chemical compounds that have a glycerol backbone with different nitro groups on that have to be metabolized into nitric oxide by the mitochondria. So they're not spontaneous nitric oxide donors. They have to be metabolized, and it overwhelms the cell and the system, and you become intolerant to it.
Got it. And that's creating a decline in performance.
That's right. And it makes endothelial function worse, creates oxidative stress, and so long-term use of these drugs is not a good idea. So there's a severe unmet need, just like in most poorly managed chronic diseases in the U.S. or worldwide.
So for people who are looking to get more information about you, more information about nitric oxide, Numa, any number of the companies that you're involved in right now, where would they do that?
I send people to my YouTube channel because we provide content, education, awareness.
Education forward.
It's Dr. Nathan S. Bryan, nitric oxide.
Dr. Nathan S. Bryan, and that's Bryan.
BRYN, nitric oxide. I just published a new book. Jay Bolston, Brick Tower Press is my publisher. Alan Morrell and creative management partner, my agent, called The Secret of Nitric Oxide, Bringing the Science to Life, where I tell really the story of nitric oxide, what it is, what it does, what led to a Nobel Prize. And in that book, I intertwine my kind of personal life, my series of discoveries that we made in academia, patents, the development of product technology, what nitric oxide does in Alzheimer's, diabetes, sports performance, really taking the complex science and hopefully putting it into an easy to comprehend lay read. But, that's a great resource. I'm searchable on most search engines.
Is it on audio too?
It is on audio. We're having it translated now to Portuguese, German, Chinese, Spanish, perhaps Italian.
I'm going to probably listen in English.
I would recommend.
That's going to actually have the best comprehension for me. So
and then to follow our drug discovery, it's bryantherapeutics.com.
Right.
Our drug programs. For our consumer products, we're at n101.com. That's one nitrogen, the letter N, number one, letter O, number one.com. n101.com.
n101.com, and then Bryan Therapeutics.
Therapeutics.com.
And that's BRYAN again.
Yeah, Bryan Therapeutics.
And I look forward to having future conversations with you, buddy.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot we can talk about.
All right.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.